Holy mackerel, man. How does a young kid get in on that unless he can take over the farm and run dad's operation and fill in that way? But generally speaking, that's not how it works, not that I'm aware of. So what we're going to have to do is look at immigration and how does it work? You know, we have to take a pro-Canada point of view and say, what kind of people do we need? Like, if we can get our hands on skilled plumbers, and because the trades are really suffering, in construction and so on, they need to have those ranks fleshed out. But in the long run, we need to start having more of our own kids, because 20 years from now, they'll be stepping into the workforce, and we won't need as many immigrants in the same places that we need them now. So I really think that's got to be part of the program, is how to get Canadians to have more kids, because our birth rate is well below that of replacement. And if you can't have at least 2 live births per woman, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, well, that's a separate issue altogether, Nick. It's related in its consequences, but I think that the causes of this are complicated and deeply entrenched in our society now. I don't know what there simply are no easy answers to encouraging larger sized families. It's and there's a lot of discrimination against large sized families too.
Well, the very first thing you could do very easily is just cut taxes. Make it so that people keep more of their money and have more of it at home in their pocket, so that raising children isn't as expensive as it is right now.
Yeah, well, that would be the first thing I would say. Absolutely, the very first thing. Just cut taxes across the board and let people, keep their money and do with their money whatever it is that they want to do with it. And, everyone should benefit from that, but working families especially.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. And there's another element that Marin just brought up in the chat room. If we take in skilled workers, let's say somebody comes from someplace on the other side of the globe, maybe a second world or even a third world country, but they're very good at what they do. Say a carpenter or someone who's I can't even come up with a trade, but I'll pick on carpenter just because it's the first thing that crossed my mind. If they come to Canada and they can fill a need, great. But what we're doing, it's the old brain drain. We're taking people out of a country that needs their skills in order to help them, go from third to second to first world status. And how does that fit into the whole program? Like, how many of those can we take away before we really begin to hurt the country that, oh my Godistan, living in poverty? They need those people and their skills and their hard work in order to help them lift themselves out of their own misery. And if you take too many, it's going to have that impact. I've
talked about this before, and I've raised this in a couple of symposia that I've spoken at over the years, and quite frankly, been laughed at. But I completely agree with what you're saying and what the issue that Marin is raising right now. I think that it's, in fact, one could argue that there is a form, some kind of I hesitate to use the term racism, but there are some very real issues involved in doing this. I call it poaching. You're poaching the best and the brightest and the educated from those communities, those societies that need that kind of intellectual and skills capital in order to raise themselves up. And what we do is we say to those people in Africa who are in third world countries living in abject poverty, we say to them, thanks very much for training your skilled workers. They can jump to the front of the line, come over here and apply their trade in Canada. And God bless them, good for them as individuals, okay? Don't get me wrong. But one does wonder, what is the consequence? What is the detrimental effect of such a policy on the society where these people are coming from? And is it kind of a 21st century sort of, fingers crossed, nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of colonialism when you think about it, okay? For want of a better way of describing it. I sound like a real lefty lunatic now, but I think it's a very real point. I think it's a very valid point. How do you expect countries and societies to lift themselves out of the poverty and to build themselves a real middle class when the people who would most qualify for being a middle class and for creating the kind of wealth and added value in production, we look at them and go, okay, we want you over here helping to create, to not just to create, but to maintain our standard of living at the expense of the standard of living in the community you're coming from. It's a very real question.
Yeah. So now there's another question. Again, there's a lot of facets to this. Like, what about those who want to leave and come over to Canada for that better life? Because basically that's what's populated this country going back 400 or 500, maybe a little more years, where you have people leaving, let's say, Europe in the 15 or 16 or 1700s for a whole bunch of reasons. Everything from religious persecution to better opportunities to the desire to own land, all kinds of problems that they fled from to come here and help build Canada into one of the greatest nations the world has ever seen. Now, there's nothing saying that, let's say I'm going to pick on Ghana as an example, that the people from Ghana, I think they're called Ghanaians, and if they're not, then I apologize. I'm not trying to be obtuse. But they just, why can't they do the same thing? Take the opportunity. See, we can help them by giving them the advantages we have developed through the Industrial Revolution and through our ability to generate cheap electrical power, an opportunity to take their country from third to first world in relatively short order, because they don't have to learn all the hard lessons that we do. We can help them by giving them that knowledge and technology so that they can build their own country up, and people won't want to leave nearly for the same reasons and in the same numbers as they're currently doing now.
Yeah, well, if I had the answers, Nick, I'd be laying them out, but I don't have the answers. The only thing that I can tell you almost definitively is that there is no real thinking that goes into the number of people that we bring into the country every year. To a very large degree, it's just pulling the number out of the air and saying, okay, I think we should have 450,000 people coming to Canada every year. I mean, that 450,000, Nick, it's a full percentage point. It's more than 1%, and that may not sound like a lot, but it really is. And
well, it's a city twice the size of London, Ontario.
Sure. When you think about it. So, and to be honest with you, it's more than 10% of the actual size of the city of Toronto. Okay, the city of Toronto is not 400 or 4.5 million people. It's more than 5% of the city of New York, which is about 8 million people. So 400, either way you cut it, 400,000 people is a lot of people. And all of the employment issues and the benefits issues and all of that stuff, set aside all of that stuff, just on a simple infrastructure level, there has to be better coordination. There has to be some coordination between the people on the ground in municipalities who have to provide the infrastructure and the basic services for these people when they come. There has to be a better coordination between them and the federal government that's making these targets or imposing these targets. And
yeah, it'd be nice if they would at least. Yeah, it's time to take that break, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately, Nick. So we're going to, if you're listening to the live show, ladies and gentlemen, stay put, or get up and stretch your legs, one way or the other, or whatever works for you. And if you're listening to the podcast, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the Nick and Joe Show on Think Radio Broadcast Network.